Okay. Good morning. Thanks very much for joining us today. I'm Victoria Higgins, the Virginia Director for the Chesapeake Climate Action Network, which is the first grassroots nonprofit organization dedicated exclusively to fighting global warming in Maryland, Virginia, and Washington, D.C. We're gathering here today to discuss Dominion Energy's proposal for a massive 1,000 megawatt fracked gas peaker plant, what would be the largest of its kind in Virginia and one of the largest in the Southeast. In 2020, Virginia became a climate leader in the South by mandating a move to 100% clean energy, outlining a retirement schedule for existing fossil fuel resources, investing heavily in solar, wind, energy efficiency, and battery storage, and joining the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative to keep us on track to meet that zero carbon goal. This gas plant proposal shows that all of this is at stake. It is the direct result of Governor Youngkin's energy plan, which called for massive new gas infrastructure, and it is the utility's first attempt to build new fossil fuel generation following the passage of Virginia's 100% clean energy law. After losing on their priorities in the 2023 state legislative session, Dominion has thrown their full weight behind Youngkin's regressive energy plan. Their 2023 integrated resource plan indicated they would support and carry out all of Youngkin's priorities, from leaving the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative to pushing for half a dozen or more new and large gas facilities to building unbelievably expensive and largely untested small modular nuclear reactors. Governor Youngkin issued a press release within minutes of Dominion's press release about the IRP, indicating the two had closely communicated on public communications. This plan makes achieving our zero carbon goals impossible, and it places huge economic burden and risk upon ratepayers. Residents are gathering today at 6 p.m. at Bellwood Community Center in Chesterfield to mobilize against this plant, and we're excited to organize this press conference today to clearly articulate the dangers we see in this proposal. The recording of this event, as well as photos and a press release from the community event, will be sent as a follow-up, so we'll hear from our three panelists first before taking questions from the Q&A. So thanks for joining. I'd first like to introduce Bill McKibben, an incredible environmental activist who founded 350.org, a leading global climate advocacy organization, as well as Third Act, an organization that mobilizes Americans over the age of 60 to demonstrate peacefully for climate action. He's also the celebrated author of the book, The End of Nature, as well as numerous other publications. So Bill, thanks for joining and take it away.
Well, Victoria, many thanks. And I'm, of course, joining from a distance to provide a kind of perspective from a distance. This would be a bad plan at any moment, but it comes with particular irony right now. To be making this announcement after we've gone through the hottest day and week and month on this planet for at least the last 125,000 years. After making this announcement, after the waters of the Atlantic are registering heat so great that it's not just off the charts, it's off the wall, the charts are tacked too. It's a reminder that companies like Dominion and leaders like Youngkin are completely out of touch with where the science is right now. Where the science is an all-out plea for the rapid transition off fossil fuels, not building new stuff, but closing down just as fast as we can the stuff that we've got. That should be relatively easy because the price of renewable energy has dropped 90% in the last decade. We live on a planet where the cheapest way to produce power is to point a sheet of glass at the sun. That's not the most profitable way for Dominion to produce power. And it's contributions from people like Dominion that fuel way too much of our political system. So that's what we're seeing here, a zombie relic of an old fossil fuel age that we do not need and cannot have unless we're committed to endless summers like the one that we've been struggling through this year. Thanks.
Thank you, Bill. I'd now like to welcome Cale Jaffe, Director of the Environmental Law and Community Engagement Clinic at the University of Virginia. He has in the past served as an attorney for the Southern Environmental Law Center was appointed by former Governor Northam to the Virginia Coal and Energy Commission, and has been a board member in the past for the Virginia Conservation Network. Welcome, Cal.
Thank you, Victoria, and thank you, Bill, for your leadership and your sage words, not just today, but over many decades. I want to pick up on something that both Bill said and that Victoria said. So first, on sort of the moment we are in terms of addressing the climate crisis, there has been a lot of data about this past July having been the warmest July, both in the ocean and on land in recorded history. Temperatures in Athens hitting 120 degrees, sustained 110 days in Phoenix, Arizona. And, you know, I would caution, this is not the new normal. We won't know where the new normal is until we actually decarbonize and transition to a zero carbon electricity grid. Then we can begin to see where that new normal might land. But as it is, we're continuing to accelerate down this path. And what I want to focus on here is a real dissonance in Dominion's plans and what the company has said before under the statutes that are on the books here in Virginia that it has said it has supported in the past. So, you know, Virginia has on the books a couple of statutes that I would call our decarbonization statutes. Both of these were laws that were passed by the General Assembly here in Virginia, signed into law in 2020. They're in the Code of Virginia. They are binding statutes. Governor can't change them. The company can't change them. The only way to change them is to get a new law passed through the General Assembly. The first of these decarbonization statutes is the Virginia Clean Economy Act. That mandates that Dominion Energy shift to a zero carbon electricity grid by 2045. That is in the Code of Virginia. It's not an aspiration, it's a mandate in the statute. The second decarbonization statutes of the second statute is the Virginia Clean Energy and Community Flood Preparedness Act. It's a long name, but the gist of it is it directs Virginia to work to establish a carbon dioxide cap and trade program that would comply with the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. Again, that's a statute that is on the books, can't be changed by regulation. It's the law of the land here. And when you look at the decarbonization statutes, the result cannot be clearer. It says, and this is from the Clean Economy Act, that by December 31st, 2045, Dominion has to retire all of its electric generating units in the Commonwealth that emit carbon as a byproduct of generating electricity. That would be this plant. And yet Dominion's proposing to build this plant, 1,000 megawatts of gas, and put it into service in 2027, just 18 years before the company has to get to zero. So that means, you know, the numbers here are just not working out. One of two things has to happen. Either the company is planning to retire this plant early. You know, currently gas plants like this might be in service for 36 years. Latest data on that is most of them are retiring after about 36 years of service. And a company like Dominion would amortize the cost of this, let's say $600 million, maybe more, over that full 36-year period or a significant portion of it. So if Dominion's going to retire this plant after only 18 years, there are a lot of stranded costs there. Who's going to be left holding the bag? Is it Dominion customers, ratepayers, families? Is it Dominion shareholders? That's an important question we have to be asking. So that's one possibility, that we're going to retire this plant halfway through its life at an exorbitant cost. The other possibility is Dominion is not planning to meet the Virginia Clean Economy Act target to retire all of its fossil generation in the Commonwealth by 2045. And that is truly alarming, because the only way the Dominion cannot retire these units if under the statute there is an emergency where, for reasons of reliability, they have to keep a fossil plant on. But we have a lot of time, and we've had a lot of time to plan ahead for the retirement of these fossil generations. As Victoria mentioned, Dominion is actively in its 2023 integrated resource plan docket right now. That is looking out at least 15 years to 2038. So right on that horizon. And yet that plan is still banking on, I've got the numbers here, laying at about 36 million tons of carbon dioxide emissions in 2048. So a massive increase in global warming pollution is what's in the integrated resource plan. They should be planning, of course, how they're going to get to zero by 2045 as the law requires. And as long as we've got Bill McKibben here, just as a coda, I just want to say it's not that, oh, Dominion has to quickly prepare and figure out how to retire by 2045. That's a fast timeline. It's been a much longer timeline than that. I read Bill McKibben's book, The End of Nature here, back. I bought this copy in February of 1990, hard copy, brand new book. And it explained that, you know, looking out to 2000 from the year of 1989, 1990, might seem like a long way away, but we've got to begin planning. And had this analogy that stuck with me. It said, look, the year 2000 is as close to us as the election of Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan seemed like a near thing at that time. So we've had, since the Reagan era, knowledge to plan to get to the zero carbon economy. We're way behind the task in doing it. And we've got to settle this dissonance in the statute. Is Dominion getting to 2045 target, or are they dealing with a stranded asset? Sorry for going longer than anticipated, Victoria, but I'll hand it back to you.
That's all right, Cal. Thanks so much. Finally, I'd like to introduce Gustavo Angeles, the Environmental Justice Program Manager for the Virginia Sierra Club. Gustavo is a decorated scholar who received his Doctor of Law in Peru before pursuing a master's and PhD in education in the States. His work now centers frontline communities in environmental advocacy by integrating environmental justice into the Virginia chapter's campaigns and numerous volunteer chapters throughout the state. Welcome, Gustavo.
Thank you very much. And good afternoon, everybody. There you go. Okay. Good afternoon. I'd like to express my thanks to all the partner organizations and speaker of this press conference. The fact that we are coming together to oppose this gas-fired power plant speaks volumes to the importance and urgency of this issue. The concern of this proposed facility boils down to two issues: cost and pollution. If decision makers allow Dominion to build this gas plant, families will suffer higher monthly electric bills just so Dominion can pollute even more. This is the only outcome, and our communities deserve better. The Chesterfield gas power plant will make our electric costs more expensive in two major ways. First, Dominion will raise our monthly electric bills to pay for the $600 million or more construction price of this facility. That monthly increase will last for years, even if the power plant is not operational or effective at providing power. Secondly, gas plants like the one proposed for Chesterfield depends on natural gas fuels that is rapidly becoming more expensive. Last year, Dominion already raised the minimum monthly bill for electricity by $15 a month because price of natural gas increased. According to the Census Bureau, last year, 1/5 of Virginians said that they struggled to afford basic goods like food or medicine because their electric bills were too expensive. As long as Dominion builds new gas plants, families are forced to suffer unaffordable electric costs. So it is important that decision makers know this inescapable truth. Support for Dominion's Chesterfield gas plant is support to make electricity more expensive. Of equal concern is the level of pollution this plant will bring to an already overburdened community. If built, the Chesterfield gas plant will be the largest of its kind in Virginia. And despite what Dominions claim, there is no such a thing as a clean peaker plant. They all pollute. Peakers plants leak toxic chemicals that cause asthma, heart disease, and numerous other life-altering illnesses. Many families in Chesterfield, many of whom are people of color, are already impacted by pollution from other gas plants and industrial facilities. Allowing Dominion to move forward with this pollution-intensive project increases harm in our area that experiences too much of this already. The reason we are against this plan is simple. No child should be forced to breathe air that makes it sick, and no family should be forced to choose between basic goods and keeping the lights on. Dominion can do better. Solar is the cheapest form of energy, and it doesn't come with the trade of making communities sick. Together, decision makers, advocates, and communities must demand better from Dominion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Gustavo. We've now heard from our three speakers, so I'm happy to take any questions in the chat from folks that would like to submit them to the Q&A. I have one to start us off, and maybe Kale, Gustavo, and Bill, if you all want to put on your videos, whoever feels prepared to respond can go ahead and do so. So first question, for some people, this summer has been a pivotal moment by demonstrating climate impacts like extreme heat, flooding, and air pollution from wildfires. How do you think Virginians will react to Dominion's proposal?
Well, I'll give it just a, I mean, I can't speak for Virginians, but I can say that around the country, the polling data is making it very clear that people are freaked out about what's happened this summer. And it's been one thing after another. You'll recall that, you know, even Virginia wasn't far enough from the Canadian border to escape the day after day of bizarre orange skies as wildfire smoke poured down from the biggest wildfires in Canadian history. Those kind of effects are shattering any sense that people in the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic might have had that they were a little less exposed to the dangers of climate change than anybody else. It's very clear that every place is on the line here. And just to back up what Gustavo said, there's also the very real reminder that when we get stuff like that wildfire smoke that came down from Canada, I mean, truthfully, I was kind of pleased that we had a couple of days in the power corridor from New York to Washington of wildfire smoke, because it meant that for a little while, the most important people in the world were getting to breathe the air that most humans get to breathe almost every day. The effects of combustion aren't confined to raising the temperature of the planet. We now know that 1 death in 5 on this earth comes from breathing the byproducts of fossil fuel combustion. And the idea that, you know, that even aside from the climate damage, that people be proposing new fossil fuel plants in the summer of 2023 is just absurd. It's just it boggles the mind, frankly. It makes no economic sense. It makes no public health sense. It makes no environmental sense. And more people every week are catching on to that, I think. And I imagine that Virginia is no different from any place else in that.
And I'll just pick up on that to say, in terms of the immediate impact and how Virginians are reacting, there were some remarkable comments filed by the Virginia Clinicians for Climate Action. This is a group of medical professionals, doctors, nurse practitioners, and others who documented in their comments on to the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, documented that patients are presenting today with public health harms linked to climate change. So they're suffering asthma that's gotten worse because of climate. They're suffering heat exhaustion, expansion of tick-borne illness range, certainly anxiety and others sort of clear climate-related harms. But what was really interesting was to see from doctors and medical professionals that the patients in their exam rooms in Virginia today are already presenting with public health harms linked to climate change.
And in addition to that, I will say that Virginians, well, everybody today on the country wake up with news related that the U.S. consumer credit card debt has went up to 1 trillion. People are suffering and just trying to put a new gas power plant using an energy that is not reliable in cost, is not the cheapest alternative, is going to put more pressure on the pockets of everybody that lives here in Virginia just to pay something that a company is decided to do instead of choosing for a better, clean, alternative energy source that will provide energy to Virginians at a cheaper cost.
Thanks, everyone. I have another question, perhaps for Cale, although if anyone else feels compelled to answer, please do. Dominion cites reliability concerns when talking about this project, specifically the intermittent nature of renewables and battery limitations. Does that strike you as a broader demand planning failure, given the explosion of data center demand we're expecting? And can you make a case for renewable reliability?
So this is an issue that is front and center in the current integrated resource plan docket before the Virginia State Corporation Commission. And testimony was just filed yesterday by several different environmental experts on behalf of the Sierra Club, on behalf of Appalachian Voices, on behalf of Clean Virginia. So I'd certainly encourage Patrick to go ahead and certainly look at the expert testimony that was just filed yesterday on that exact issue that rebuts the idea that we need fossil gas backup to meet reliability, that whether it's through greater investments in energy efficiency, greater investments in distributed energy technologies, greater investment in battery storage technologies. There are a lot of other options to sort of crack the reliability nut than just building fossil generation. And Dominion even gets that to some extent. Their integrated resource plan lists 5 different alternative plans. Not all of those plans require building a lot of fossil gas, but what seems to be Dominion's preferred plan does, and that really is the core of the problem.
Yeah, just to add here, I mean, the price of batteries has dropped something like 90% in the last decade. And that technology is getting better and better and better with each passing week. There's a new development, a new method, on and on and on. The idea that you build a huge plant to last 40 years in a time when the technology is obviously passing it by and going in a different direction is just craziness, explainable only by the fact that it fits the kind of business as usual model that utilities like and are comfortable with. But business as usual is no longer a very good plan, not on a planet that's overheating dramatically.
Thank you. Another question from the Q&A. When asked, a Dominion representative said the recent high temperatures actually reinforce the need for a plant like this that would theoretically ensure nearby residents have things like air conditioning. Is the environmental concern so great that it's not worth the risk, and are there better solutions?
Well, if that's the Dominion response, I think we now know the definition of chutzpah. It's right there. To be exacerbating the problem, and then to say the only solution to the problem we've helped build is to make that problem worse. I don't know what more to say than that.
You can, I mean, there's now clear thousands of cases around the world of people managing to run big electric systems quite well with increased use of batteries and everything else. And they, in fact, the thing that saved Texas during its epic heat spell earlier this year was the fact that it wasn't relying as heavily on fossil fuel as it had been before, that they'd put up enough renewable energy that when those big plants started cracking, they had some backup in the form of solar panels. I mean, you don't have, I mean, it's not only that it's incredibly ironic, as Cale points out, this, you know, throwing, you know, it's like, you know, announcing that you're, it's like murdering your parents and then asking the court to show you mercy because you're an orphan. But it's also ironic because this hot summer, if nothing else, should serve to remind us that the sun is a very useful source of energy. And you know, it's blazing away up there day in and day out, and we now know how to use it. So what kind of fools are we if we don't make full use of it?
And if that's the answer from Dominion for the summer, I would like to hear what is the answer and the excuse to say gas is good for the winter. And the plant has to work the whole year, not only seasonal. And we can see what happened in Texas when gas, again, is not a reliable source because Texas suffer a lot during the winter because of the freeze.
Thank you. One more question. We might have time for an additional one if anyone else wants to submit a question to the chat. What would it mean for the rest of the South if Virginia were to abandon its climate goals under Youngkin?
I mean, that's specifically for the South. I mean, I think was so beneficial about the Virginia Clean Economy Act and the Community Flood Preparedness Act coming together was it gave Virginia the opportunity to be a real leader on a clean energy transition, on the transition to zero carbon economy. And so one example I think of where, you know, the kinds of opportunities that you lose, you look at the Ford electric vehicle battery plant, that where Virginia had initially been at the front of the queue to get this massive investment that would bolster the economy of Southern Virginia, Pennsylvania County, Danville, where the plant was proposed. And instead, that plant is now moving to Michigan. Those are jobs lost, economic tax base that we've lost that's going to go to Michigan as part of that clean energy transition. So that's what I think we really lose in the Southeast if we sort of abandon these climate goals, is a chance to really seize an opportunity to be to benefit economically in terms of jobs, taxes, and industrial growth in the clean energy transition.
In addition to that, the offshore wind also has a huge potential, and we'll start seeing the developments now, and more industry will come in the upcoming years. But this is the type of energy that we need to start looking for, that it will be reliable, and there is plenty on it, and we need to start using. The fact that we have a monopoly here on the energy creates a lot of problems, and going back or continue trying to perpetuate this, the use of fossil fuels is not going to get us anywhere where we need to be. It's not reliable. In cost, it's really expensive. There is too many external factors that affect the cost. And also, if the weather gets extremely cold, it does not work. So using fossil fuels and saying that they are reliable, that's not true.
Thank you all very much. That is all the questions I have today. So I really appreciate Cale, Bill, Gustavo for joining us today. As I said, there is a community meeting in Bellwood and Chesterfield today at 6 p.m. So we will follow up with all of the reporters here to make sure that y'all get the press release and photos from that event as well. And we just thank you for tuning in today.
And Victoria, thank you for conducting us so ably through the half hour. Take care, everybody.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye.